Hello, everybody. Welcome back to some more Overwatch League Pick'ems. I'm back here with Rod finally. Summer Showdown just came down. Just finished up last week, and we saw Dallas win. I feel like that was. Oh, we saw Dallas win for the West region, and we saw Shanghai win for the East. I feel like that was pretty predictable.
Yeah, most of us expected what was going to happen to happen. I mean, really, there wasn't much competition between those with the Dragons and with the Field. They both pretty much had a handle on each of the regions respectively. They both kind of played similar too, with both the West region and the East region having not only just a clear you know top team, but they also both had clear runner-ups in Seoul and Shock, who did pretty much really well, but they couldn't crack the number ones in the team, and that's why both of them ended up getting second place.
Yeah, and I think the really surprising thing, especially when it comes to the West region, is the only team that gave Dallas a true difficulty was the Justice, who almost beat the Fuel in round one, going map five, and that match was pretty close throughout it all, even in that final map. It really could have went either way. Of course, Justice got reverse swept, but regardless, I
As
mean,
Justice do.
it's just like the one team you would expect to be able to take a map off the Fuel in this tournament. Like if you were told, hey, Dallas is going to be facing three teams in the tournament: Justice, Spitfire, and Shock. The one team you would expect them to lose at least a map to is the Shock, and it's the only team that couldn't take a map off the Fuel. Because even London took a map off of Dallas, whereas Shock lost 3-0 and 4-0 respectively in their two meetings in the tournament.
Yeah, which I find it interesting, and the at least like in the three matches they played, Shock only got one map. That's his entire thing on the Dallas field. So either Dallas really had the download on the Shock, or Shock just wasn't able to take down the fuel at all. Because it's not like Shanghai where they were like the or I think Dallas's reign had a lot less like impact than Shanghai. Like I think it was a little bit more competitive, not too competitive because Dallas was clearly number one. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you're looking at what I'm going through on here, uh, I think it was more so just the fact that Shock, I said this in my bracket video where I talked about how the Shock don't seem to particularly have a fantastic grip on the meta. And I mean, if you look at their performance here, they lost a map to the Titans, and it was a really good match between the Titans. The same thing happened with the Outlaws, and then the same thing happened with Toronto. Like their performances weren't clean, they weren't great, they weren't what you would expect from the Shock. And that is also just the fact that, Vancouver, Toronto, and Houston were all really decent teams, if not great teams. I mean, Houston was third seed, Toronto was fourth seed, and Vancouver was what, sixth seed? Either sixth or seventh. I don't remember off the top of my head right now, but
Uh,
it was definitely like Shock definitely had a lot of really good competition in this tournament, and I think that there was potential for the Shock to lose any of the matches they had. And I mean, quickly going over East region, I mean, I think this was pretty textbook. I mean, sure, I had most of this wrong, but that's just because uh, I went spicy with Fusion going to the end, in winners like they did in the kickoff clash. But I knew that was more likely going to be wrong. But I thought I'd take the whim on it. I felt like this was pretty standard in APAC. But now we go onto the Countdown Cup and the playoffs. There actually isn't a tournament for the Countdown Cup. It's more so just play-ins. So, immediately starting here with crystal ball picks, who do you think is going to make it to the playoffs from each region, and who do you think is going to win the playoffs? I mean, actually, first we should probably talk about what do you think is the meta?
Personally, I think the meta, since we don't have Kiriko, I think it's still going to be pretty much like the old meta, but maybe less impactful. Because I don't know if they're going to do too much to it to where it becomes the less viable option. It may be the case, but I think we're probably still going to see most of what we saw earlier, but maybe it's to a less extent, and you might be able to see some teams take advantage of it and find something new and experiment. But
Yeah,
I
because I
think the
mean,
old meta
with
will still probably be a little bit more power or a little bit powerful.
yeah, because I don't remember if this was I believe this was contenders, but we have seen a small glimpse into what is being played going on with like Sombra and a hit scan, either like Sojourn, Ash, or Cassidy, alongside like Doomfist, Zarya, or possibly even Junker Queen. I don't remember. With like Lucio Ana or Brigana. So it does seem like it's going more of a double hit scan kind of performance here with Sombra and a hit scan. So definitely a lot of shakeups here that could possibly happen since a lot of teams don't have multiple hit scan players. Uh, like Glads is like the only are one of the only ones I could think of, and they just got rid of Ons uh, a week or so ago. But
Yeah, but they have
they have
Happy.
Patty. They have Happy and Patty, so they definitely can run that double hit scan. And even if so, Kevster is a great Sombra. I think that's more likely who's going to be playing Sombra. With Patty possibly coming back and playing the Sojourn, or having Happy be playing the Ash, or even going on to the Sojourn as well. The Glads are definitely looking to be a much stronger team for this tournament, or going into the playoffs. Shock is another one. You know, they have Sam, Proper, and Finn. Definitely, or not Finn, Kilo. Finn is their support. Uh, I mean, Shock, it all just kind of depends, because a lot of these teams don't have the double hit scan that you would expect. What, personally myself, I feel like this is kind of a safe one going with the Gladiators for the West region. And my own personal bias, I know Houston's going to make it. I know Houston's not going to win it. But I want to go with the Houston Outlaws for my second crystal ball. So, who do you have for your West?
So I'm just gonna pick the number one seed, and that'd be the Shock. And then I'm probably pick Dallas too, because I know I went with like the safe pick last option, and that didn't work.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're gonna see Dallas screw up to the way the Gladiators did, because this Dallas is at a core like a solid team, but I think the Gladiators are a much more newer put together roster, and that's probably why I just think the meta wasn't fit for them. But I think Dallas's team can adapt to most metas, so picking Shock and Dallas is the easy one.
Yeah, I could definitely see Dallas, Shock, Glads all making it towards grand finals. Especially the Gladiators and the Fuel. I think that those two could make a really great grand finals. To see the Gladiators, like, to person myself, I see Gladiators taking home the entire season. I think that they are going to win the grand finals this year. But it all just kind of depends on what the meta is going into this. Because, I mean, you know, we have seen glimpses of what it could be. We haven't gotten official, full list of changes. Only the leak, which kind of seems to be apparent that that is what the patch notes actually will be. So it's definitely possible that this could all change still. But Gladiators, Shock, Dallas, all great picks. And for my own personal bias, Houston is a phenomenal pick. For East Region, I mean, I just gotta go with Seoul, Shanghai. That's
Yeah, like
I
there's not really a bunch of great picks. It's only right or wrong picks.
Yeah, it's either you go with Seoul and Shanghai and be guaranteed to have both of those be right in some way, shape, or form. But if you go with like the Spark or the Fusion, you know that you're gonna be pretty disappointed.
I think I think the only like other option if you like really wanted to like say you really hated Shanghai or something, or you want like really hated Seoul, you could pick Philly. It'd definitely be like
Yeah, like you
a
could go with either
unsmart
Spark or
decision.
Fusion, honestly.
I don't think
But
you can go with Spark. I don't think you can go Spark,
I mean,
but
it depends.
Fusion's like the only third option.
With this meta, with the Junker Queen meta, it was clear that they didn't have it. But like when
Yeah.
it came
And
to
if it's like
other,
if it's
when it
anything
came,
similar,
yeah,
then it's no, no.
yeah. But when it came to like the midseason madness and kickoff clash, Spark is a great pick. But at this point now, I feel like right now you should be a bit more cautious with what you're picking, which would lead
But
Seoul to
yeah, you
Shanghai.
only get two crystal ball picks, and funny
Yeah.
enough, there's only two top tier teams in APAC.
So let me save those so I don't forget about them this time. So there's my crystal balls locked in. Houston and Gladiators going to from the West region, and Shanghai and Seoul going in the East region. And I'm kind of surprised that we didn't have any kind of similarities. I mean, sure, I if it wasn't for my love for Houston, I would have picked Dallas. I definitely see Dallas being a likely winner of the of grand finals as well.
I The thing is, I don't know how you can pick Gladiators after last tournament. Like I know, yeah, they're definitely gonna make it this
Because
time,
Junker Queen's not going to
but
be the meta. Like that's their goal, and usually
the
when they
loss
nerf
of
a
the loss
character,
of trust I got with the Gladiators just I don't trust them like to win the next tournament anymore. Like I think Fuel has like rejuvenated. They fueled themselves, if you could say, enough to where they can finally I think take the I think they definitely are going to be able to take the probably the number one spot in APAC or not APAC NA. They just look so much better of a team as of now than Gladiators does.
I mean, look at how when there's a character who is overbearing on the metagame, such as Brigitte, Doomfist, Sigma, they when they get nerfed, they don't just get nerfed; they get nerfed into the ground to where they're pathetically useless. And if that's the case, Gladiators have nothing to worry about. And even if that
Or
isn't the
or
case, it
or
seems
you
as though
forgetting
the
about the
metagame's
other
a bit more flexible.
you're forgetting about the other option that Blizzard likes to do. It's nerf things that don't even matter, or nerf the thing that matters, but to where it's a non-existent nerf. Like they'll like get rid of like 3 HP from Rampage or something. Like that's something Blizzard also likes to do. We're depending on like what like nerfs are we going to be seeing and how does it affect it. We don't know.
Well, if
Like
you want to
I'm not
refer to the to the leaked patch notes, I mean,
to the leaks. It's a leak. I'm not
yeah.
basing my entire like philosophy off of one leak.
I mean, I'm not typically either, but I know that Junker Queen's definitely gonna be nerfed in this next patch, and it
Well,
seems
yeah,
likely that
they
she's not
said
gonna
they're
be
gonna be
as
nerfed, but like how?
overbearing. That was what Gladiator's problem was, and even then, Space has shown that he was a pretty decent Junker Queen, and I feel like if Junker Queen is still the meta, you're gonna be running Space.
Yes, but we're talking about the winner, not the who's gonna make it.
I'm playing for that.
Because
If I get a winner, then that's just bonus. But going on before we continue arguing about this more, onto the West region, we actually are also going to be going to the East region because they are playing this week. To start off the tournament, we have the Boston Uprising and the Houston Outlaws. How likely is this that Houston just win?
mm, probably likely. Like I'm not a Houston supporter like you are, but even I can say that like Boston's just like they're the best of the worst teams, which isn't saying much. Like
I
I mean,
mean,
Boston's probably gonna have to fight for their lives to keep like that play-in spot that they have right now.
are they in the
So
play-ins?
that might help them. Was it?
I thought they were cut
Yeah,
off.
it's like the 10th or something. I don't know.
No, it's Nixel, Titans, and Eternal that are cut off right now in West region. But also let's think about this with Houston. When they go up against those bottom four teams in week one, typically day one, they usually lose. Could this happen
Well,
again?
yeah, but even I think every team has something to play for, so every team's gonna be a bit sweaty. Like Houston has they just want to like get their spot, like they just want to like get a good spot, so they don't have to worry as much when they go to face the bigger teams. So I don't think they're gonna want to like choke uh right here. Like they're gonna want to like secure their spot now, which are pretty close, and then once they secure their spot, they can probably like rest a bit, which I feel like a lot of these top tier teams are gonna do, which is something to take into account. I remember last year around this sort of time, we started to see a bunch of teams that were like we thought were gonna dominate, just kind of fall off because their coach is like, oh, well, we're gonna rest and all that. We're gonna wait for grand finals. So that is something to take into account, but I don't think that really applies to either of those teams since neither of those teams are like the big dogs.
Yeah, I mean Houston is confirmed. Like they have clinched alongside Dallas Gladiators and Shock. So they definitely could slack off a bit if they feel like it. But I feel like Houston's going to be vying for as high of a seed as they can, fourth or even third seed, not place, but definitely one of those top four seeds. And another team that's going to be vying for top four seed is Dallas as they go up against Justice. I feel like Justice aren't going to be able to take on this Fuel Squad as well as they did in the Summer Showdown.
No, I think it's probably just gonna be 3-1.
I'm predicting it to be a 3-0. But now moving on to Toronto and Atlanta, definitely a match that is kind of interesting. And really just kind of depends on the meta because, again, Reign is one of those teams that really faltered during Junker Queen. And Toronto is a team that really thrives. So if Junker Queen still is in the meta, I feel like Toronto could definitely have an edge here. But if not, I feel like Atlanta could pick up the victory here.
I feel like Atlanta has just been like really unimpressive. Like not even making the tournament was like such a like showing of just how far they kind of fallen off. Like like even the Gladiators were like really close. Like they only like just made it out, but like yeah, I'm just not impressed. And with a top three finish from uh Toronto just makes it really hard to go against them in a match like this.
Yeah, I do think Toronto is going to win this, but I feel like it is going to be a very close game, especially if the metagame isn't centered around Junker Queen, which is hopefully the case. So now we move on to Friday, which consists of the London Spitfire going on to the Paris Eternal. Paris, in order to make it to playoffs, they have to be undefeated. They lose one game, they are out. They're guaranteed.
And they could go undefeated and still not make it. Like that's
Yeah,
how bad their
I
chances
think
are.
I think it would be based off of how Vancouver or Knicks will perform. That
Oh,
would
there's so many
cause.
things that need to happen for them to like they
Well,
need
yeah.
to purchase a lottery ticket and then
Regardless,
somehow
they need to be undefeated, and uh, as
this
much
is
as
this is
a
where it stops though.
as much as I as much as I used to love Paris, I know that their time here is done. 3-0 by London. Is there anything else you
Yeah.
want to mention?
Nope.
By Paris. Next up, though, we have the Gladiators and the Mayhem. Gladiators look to redeem themselves after a pretty poor performance at the Summer Showdown, while Florida looks to redeem themselves after a pretty poor tournament performance. I
Yeah.
mean,
I feel
again,
like this is gonna be like where a lot of people like had their split decisions. Like, they a lot of people are gonna see like have Gladiators fallen off, or can they get back up on their feet? And I think they're gonna be back on their feet. I think with the space composition, they finally know how to do it.
yeah, this
And the
could
Gladiators coaching, I feel like, yeah,
yeah,
they're
this could
gonna.
really show if space works in this, and
Yeah,
I
because
think
I
it probably
mean,
will. I mean,
yeah,
Space has always been a consistent player. I feel even when he's been relegated to the bench like this year, that's just kind of to show how great Reiner was, and now Space has been able to take that spot back.
I think a lot of people are probably overrating how good the Gladiators were at the end of the tournament because they only faced Paris and Atlanta, two not so overwhelming opponents. Like they probably would have beat them anyways with Reiner, I feel.
I mean, Atlanta
But
started coming up in the latter half of the tournament as well, so it's not like Atlanta was like it was like Paris. If they just faced Paris using Space, then I would get like not rating them so high, but I feel like Rain was one of those teams that like was kind of the equal to the Gladiators with Reiner, but when they brought in Space, it just felt like a completely different team. So that's why I feel like I have a lot more faith in Space than you do. Uh,
yeah, I think it's gonna win. I think it's gonna be a win regardless because I think
yeah,
even that team was probably better for the Mayhem. I think it's probably gonna be an even like bigger win too.
I think this is gonna be a fairly competitive match because Florida wasn't no slouch in their own right. They weren't great in this tournament. They did have a lot of really poor performances, such as against the neutered Washington Justice, but they're also. I feel like that just comes with how inconsistent these rookies are on this team. So now we move on though to a inconsistent team, the New York Excelsior. The only thing they're consistent at is losing for the most part, but they are against the Toronto Defiant, a team that has been really coming up. Like we mentioned with when we were talking about the rain match, had a really great performance in the Summer Showdown. I feel like this is a 3-0 on Toronto's part.
Hmm.
Like I don't
Well,
think
I mean, I
Nixel
don't know
stands a
why else it
chance.
would be. Maybe they took a map. I don't know, but yeah, it's
Yeah, I could
unlikely.
see Nixel taking a map, but that's highly unlikely.
Uh,
So moving on though, we have the London Spitfire and the Vancouver Titans. Uh, can Vancouver win a game without Junker Queen?
Not against London, if that's
I
your
mean
question.
possibly. It it really just depends on what the meta looks like, and uh, like I was mentioning at the very towards the start of this with the like teams that like we had seen with like the Sombra and hit scan stuff. Vancouver has potential. I feel like King on Sombra and then Aspire on Sojourn or Ash, with Mirror on Zarya or Doomfist, especially on Doomfist. I feel like Mirror is a great Doomfist. I think Vancouver could do a lot better against than London because London like Hottie is not a great Zarya. Paco could play in for Zarya, but I think that this could possibly go in the favor of the Vancouver Titans.
But do you though?
Yeah, I'm giving this to the Vancouver Titans, and I'm at 5. So how much do you disagree?
Did I already say 3-0? I don't know. I thought I
No, you
already
didn't.
did. Well, I said 3-0. I don't think it's gonna be relatively close. Maybe it'd be one of those close 3-0s that the devs talked about. Like, well, it was a close 3-0.
Yeah, it was like every map went like 3-2 or 2-1. And it was like 99 to 90, and to 99 to 100 on control the entire way through. Moving on to a match, we have to the next match. We have the Shock against their kryptonite almost, the Washington Justice. Will Justice be able to beat them this time though?
I'm gonna go with a boring answer. No, because
I
the
mean, it's
Shock
not
tend
boring.
to
It's
learn.
true.
Well, it is kind of boring. Like, the true things are boring most of the time.
It's
Like,
Shock wins, lol.
no one sees like I don't know Vancouver like winning against like I don't know Fuel or Shock and be like, oh my gosh, that's so boring. No, that's cool. It's exciting. But the other way around is kind of boring because you already know what's gonna happen. This one I kind of feel like you know what's gonna happen. Like Shock tends to learn about the opponents. I mean, unless it's a Fuel, which Washington Justice is not a Fuel. The Fuel. They don't have the same players or anything. They don't have the same coaches. And the Washington Justice is kind of easy team to download because they only got the 5 players.
Yeah. So moving.
So,
Oh,
is it possible? Yes, it is possible because they've been able to do some like crazy things for
and it
the
tends to be
expectations
against the
of this
Shock
team
too. And that's what the weirdest thing is that all the Justice's like weird antics come from their matches against the Shock.
or the Fuel.
Because I mean, like, look at what was it 20? Was it 2020 or 2021 where they pulled out the Roadhog Zarya?
Yeah, I don't think we need a history lesson.
Like that started against
I
the
think
Shock. Then you had this year where they almost beat the Shock, and then they could do it again. The Justice have
they
pulled
never
off some of
had
the
beaten the
strangest
Shock, so
things. The Justice have pulled off crazier. I think it's still going to be a map 5. I think that's just the Justice way. Hit that 5th map and then choke harder than anybody's choked before.
on a map because yeah, there's a potential ability for uh mass to be taken off, but it really isn't likely.
Next up, though, is another match I feel like we're gonna disagree on again is Boston, Florida. I feel like you're gonna have Florida on this one.
Well, I think you'd be delighted to know that's not the case.
Oh, all right. So we actually do agree. Cause I see
Even
Boston winning this hands down.
I think I think Boston is overdue for like a genuine win, like a win that's not on like the lower teams, but like someone who's middle of the pack. I think they're overdue for a win like that. And I think Mayhem is the perfect opponent if it's someone at their skill level that they can beat. Like even though I think Mayhem as a team is probably better than Boston, I think in the right circumstances, you know, just like a few map wins or a few map fights go their way, I think Boston could definitely beat them, and that's why I think a map 5. It's definitely not a easy battle,
I think Florida is gonna take
though.
a map. I don't like. I think it's gonna be a close game, but I think that overall Boston just the Boston needs this, and I think that's where, because they have great performances with Punk in the lineup, and with Laurie gone, Punk's back in the lineup.
That is
So
true. I did
so
forget about the coaching changes that they look so much
so
better without
Boston
Lori.
could definitely dominate here. In fact, saying this now, I would not be surprised if they beat Houston. As much as I love Houston, I think Boston has the potential, has the will, has the drive to beat the Outlaws going into this week. But again, you're talking about the Boston Uprising. When people put faith in them and they get excited over them, that's when they're known to crumble and choke. So it's best to just tread lightly. Now going on to the final day, Sunday, September 25th. Atlanta and Nixel open the day. Who do you have for this, and why is it the Atlanta Reign?
Um. Oh, yeah, it is Atlanta rain, huh?
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
Nixel's
no.
Nixel. So Dallas, Paris. So Shock
Um.
Houston.
Yeah, an actual match we can talk about. That's cool.
Yep. A match that might actually go past 30 maps.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say. I mean, what kind of in-depth analysis are we gonna do on the other two matches? Like, who, the bottom
Kellen
two
could
teams may have a
really
chance.
choke here, guys. Maybe
Uh,
Yaki and Young Bung could like combo something.
Even in the Reigns weakened state, it's still enough to beat Excelsior.
Like, oh, maybe Rack Attack could get like a massive 5K on Dallas out of nowhere.
And also with the Fuel Eternal match, you literally have the team who won the tournament
I guess the team that
against
is
literal 20,
yeah has
literal bottom feeders.
they
Like,
have won a singular game. Yeah. So
that,
there's not much
yeah.
really to say about that. Shock Houston though, this is an exciting one because you have Shock, a team where Krusty seems to be one of the coaches that tend to kind of let the his players kind of like relax during this time and let them and like not really fall, but not perform to their peak potential. Could that give the Outlaws the opening they need to secure a victory against the Shock this week?
Ah, mm, hmm, maybe. I think as the way Houston are now, I think the Shock's probably a little bit too much because even in these weakened for or like weakened states, it's not enough for most teams to beat them. Like it's mostly just like, oh, they're gonna go to map five a lot, or so like, oh, they're gonna, because usually they'll end up like getting like up 2-0 and then probably reverse sweeping because that's how it seems to go with a lot of these teams.
Yeah, and I mean,
So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens like that,
yeah, I mean, if you look at
or
that
Shock can
performance
just
though,
actually try
yeah,
because this
could
is a different
Krusty?
team.
I think it's like could Krusty grind this squad up? Because I mean, look at their performance during the summer showdown. They did not do good at all. Like that was not the shock that we would expect, even with this new
Not too
squad.
good. What?
I mean, they lost 4-0 and 3-0 in their losses. I mean, that's pretty
They came
sad.
second place.
I mean, I'm not saying that like their placement
It's
was bad. I'm saying their performances and their losses, and really in general, wasn't as up to snuff as we would expect from the Shock, especially going into this tournament. We expected Shock in Dallas to have barn burner matches, and when it came to those two coming up against one another, Shock looked like Paris, and could that have an effect on? Could that give Krusty the drive to really force this team to perform better during the this last like set of qualification matches in order to give them the best possible shot at winning the grand finals?
I think yes, but in a different way. I think unlike with the previous teams of the Shock, those teams had experience. Like they had a lot of Overwatch League experience, so not trying in a few games maybe helped them. But this team has very little Overwatch experience, or like they don't even have a season of Overwatch League experience. So I think that might be some motivation for them to try. But then again, they could try normally and not uh you know do some of the things that teams tend to do. Like it's only prediction that we think that like it's no guarantee that any team. It could be that old teams try their hardest. Some it would be more benefit than others. Some probably don't need to. Like, but I think there is enough competition at the top where I think all the teams try. I'm not counting on any team choking enough to where I'm not counting on any of these upsets, but I'm just saying the possibility is there for any team. So
Yeah.
that's why I wouldn't count on any of the upsets.
Personally, myself, I am mainly because I want Houston to win, and that's my own personal bias. I think that it's definitely possible. I think that it's likely that the Shock are gonna win, but I gotta go with my heart towards the Outlaws. They have this. They have it. Especially if they got Doomfist in this meta, I think Dante is going to carry this team to a victory against the Shock.
The Doofus just makes the team average. I mean, like, it's not enough to beat the Shock, really. You can think that,
I mean, you also got one of the
I
best
don't,
Sombras in Pelican. I mean, there's definitely a lot of potential here. And the best Sojourn in the league right now, Merit. This team has
oh, you're
power, this
just,
team has potential.
I mean, yeah, but I raised you one thing proper. Like, that's all the team needs in order to
Proper
deal
will
with
get
Houston.
properly boned by every member of the Houston Outlaws. Vancouver versus Gladiators.
Oh, you're just gonna go away? All right.
Yep, that's the
No
final
solid
statement with
argument.
that. No, that was my return argument. Was Proper's gonna get properly boned. Vancouver versus Gladiators. Who do you have and why?
Uh, who is it? Gladiators.
Gladiators
Oh,
and
Titans
Titans.
Gladiators. Yeah, it's just a 3-0.
I think I'm gonna give Vancouver a map. I think that Vancouver is definitely looking better.
Who's I was
And
saying 3-0 for the Gladiators. I'm just kidding. No, of course the Gladiators are winning 3-0.
yeah, Gladiators are definitely winning, and I think Vancouver is definitely gonna be able to take a somewhat competent match against the Gladiators. So that ends out the West region, but with the Countdown Cup, the East region is playing weeks 1 through 3. They're skipping out week 4. Starting it off real quick. Friday is Seoul versus Chengdu. I mean, this is the time that Seoul really needs to kind of pick it up, and I think they're going to with a 3-0 against the Hunters.
I don't think they really need to pick it up since I think Dragons are actually
I
they
mean,
really
if they want
could.
that first
Yeah,
seed, they're gonna have to.
they're really gonna have to. I don't know. I thought Dragons had a lot more of a fuller hold on uh number one seed, but yeah, they have Seoul uh can do it, or I don't know. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just gonna say that right now.
So now going on to Fusion Dragons. This is an exciting matchup because typically we would see Fusion get 3-0'd by the Dragons, but this year it seems like it's been kind of back and forth. Philly having dominant matches against the Dragons, Dragons having dominant matches against the Fusion, and we've seen a bit of a close game from both sides. What are you expecting us to see with this matchup?
Um, which one was it? Which one are you talking about?
Philadelphia versus Shanghai.
Uh, yeah, where's
Wonderful thoughts. So
That's week 2.
oh, this is week 2. Yeah, I'm on the wrong week. So Hunter Spark.
All right, so
I
here's
That's
where the
weird
Hunters can
because
actually win.
East region is second on here. That's why I was all right. So Hunter Spark open up the weekend. Who do you have for this?
Yeah, I think this is when Hunters can actually win. Going off of the results in the last tournament, I guess Hunters probably win that altercation.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think that it will be close, but again, personal
Uh,
myself, I'm basing this more off of how Spark performed in the previous tournaments, where Junker Queen really wasn't the meta. I think that Junker Queen is definitely going to have a presence, but just not as strong of one as she did in the Summer Showdown. And that's where the Spark is really going to start thriving, because then they're able to play that flexibility with Gushui and Bernard, as well as Alpha Yi, who is one of the best uh, DPS, along with Shy, who's also one of the most phenomenal DPS players. Really going to give Spark a big advantage here. Hunters have great players, but when it comes to the Spark, I think that Spark has the upper hand. But moving on now to the Valiant versus the Dynasty. I mean, this is pretty easy. As much as I would love to see the Valiant pick up
Yeah.
a victory or at least a map, that just seems unlikely.
Easiest tokens of my life.
Yep, easiest tokens. Uh, this is the hardest points to earn though, as we move on to Saturday, as we get to the Seoul Dynasty versus the Shanghai Dragons. This
All right, let me talk about.
huh?
Oh, yeah, let me talk about this one. I said, I'm not putting too much stock in the whole top teams are going to be taking rest strategy. But if there is one team that consistently does it every year, it is the Shanghai Dragons. It's every year they do it. Every year they're like basically number one. I mean, they don't even have to be number one, but they'll take this opportunity to just give their players a rest, and they'll look and see how they look in the, basically just train for the actual tournament that's up ahead and for grand finals. Like, that's what's in their sight right now. They don't really care about anything else. So I think this is one team that is going to do something like that. And I think Seoul can probably take advantage of that. And I don't think,
You know what you
I
think?
do think, I think it'll probably be some sort of Mat 5. If not, I think I'm putting down a Dynasty win in a Mat 5, but I could see a Dragons Mat 5 as well. They do like to go Mat 5 to each other, and there's just such a big excuse for them to go Mat 5.
I'm just saying, if Seoul loses
That's
a
what I
map
think.
to the Valiant, this is going straight to Shanghai. Just saying. If that isn't a 3-0 on Seoul, Shanghai's got this. But if
But
not, I think Seoul definitely has the
what if the
victory.
roles are switched though? What if Dragons were in that position and they lost a map to Valiant?
I mean, I
Would
probably
that
would.
change?
Yeah, I probably would still feel the same way. Just cause I mean, Shanghai, like you are right. Shanghai is a team that definitely likes to slack during, when it comes to like final playoffs, where they'll drop a few places in the seeding, which seems like a decent strategy. But I mean, this year they have to keep that this at least second seed. So I hardly doubt they're gonna
Well,
slack as
no one that's going
much.
to be able to in APAC because I think the next closest is Philly, and they're way farther beyond. Like, I think Philly is pretty much, or not Philly, Shanghai is pretty much set. Like, they're going to be able to fight both Valiant and Charge, which they won't even have to try for that match. So it's like any of the teams that could even slightly give them a scare, they can probably just not try, and that's something Coach Moon like really likes to do, just to have his players rest and wait for grand finals rather than go all out on just the countdown cup.
Which there isn't even a tournament for this. It's just rolling straight into the playoffs after this. But now we move on to the Charge and the Hunters. Something of news that came out with the Charge, they picked up Piggy off of free agency just a couple days ago. Do you think that's going to have an effect on the Charge?
Uh, Not necessarily, maybe, but I feel like there's other options they could have gotten or picked up other than Piggy. Like, not even at the tank role, because I think tank role's fine. I think they have Krong, who's decent enough, and even Rio can play some of the niche picks. I think, yeah, their tank line isn't the best, and it's probably the weakest part of the charge. So I guess that's probably why they got Piggy. And it's not a bad pickup. It's just not the best pickup. But I think other other parts they can work on too, uh maybe pick up another DPS or something because I feel like that's something they can work on too. I think their support line's fine, but yeah, I think tank and DPS is what Charge needs reworked on right now.
Yeah, charge. I mean, I feel like that's still an upgrade because I think that Piggy is definitely better than both Krong and Rio. But also, I feel like regardless that I don't think that'll give them what they need to beat the Hunters. Am I giving them a slightly better performance? Like I do think that they could go map 5. But Hunters, I feel, are going to really thrive in this meta in a way, because they're going to be able to experiment a lot more, and that's where Hunters really get their a lot of their popularity from is the fact that they are just so versatile, and I would love to see this team do really well because of the way that they are able to flex around and just kind of play whatever and make it work.
That being said, though, the Charge did look pretty well in the Summer Showdown. I think I was definitely impressed with them even making the tournament, even though they didn't really do too much.
Yeah, they
But they
lost
did
3-0
knock the
both
Chengdu
rounds.
Hunters out of the tournament, which is why I think they actually might win this one. I think if they keep up, I think if both teams keep up how they did in the Summer Showdown, which is what I'm basing it off of, I think Charge will have the upper hand.
Trust me, there is also a reason why I want the Charge to lose. All right, one team has to be kicked out of the out of playoffs for East Region, and I do not want it to be the Valiant. Not at all. I want the Charge to drop.
It's gonna be a tough,
It would need the
you know.
Valiant to win more, and it would need the Charge to kind of fall back a lot more. But I feel like it is possible. Valiant is definitely a team that, on a good day, could do a lot. And
I think internal issues with the Valiant is gonna just prevent that from
yeah,
happening.
and that's the
So
unfortunate part.
I kind of lost the faith in that. I don't think it's gonna be how it goes.
But you know what? There's still that
And even if
possibility.
it was the case, they'd still get like instantly knocked out. Like,
Well, if because isn't aren't both regions coming together for this tournament? Is everyone going to Anaheim?
I don't know, maybe.
But if everyone goes to Anaheim, wouldn't you love to see the Valiant face off against an NA team? Like really, I
Uh,
would love to see the Valiant face someone that's not the same 6 teams for once. Uh, but yeah, speaking of Valiant, they go up against Fusion next up to close out Saturday. Uh, yeah, I think that Fusion have this, but personally myself, I want to give the Valiant a fighting shot here. That's about all I have really to say. Is I want to give them faith, and I know it's poorly placed faith. It's like putting faith into the Boston Uprising, but I got to give Valiant a close win, a close loss here.
for a second, I thought you were gonna have them win. Whoops.
No, I wasn't having them win. I know they're not going to beat the Fusion. I know they can't beat the Fusion, but I definitely have them going map 5. Even though that ain't happening. That's my hopes. My hopes and my dreams. Speaking of hopes and dreams, the Dragons are going to shatter the hopes and dreams of the Charge as they beat them 3-0. anything
Well, I
else you
mean,
need
if
to say?
Charge had any hopes and dreams of being the Dragons, I think it was poorly misplaced.
Yeah. So now we move on to the end of the weekend. We have Philly versus Hangzhou. I mean, definitely, if this is the spark from previous tournaments as opposed to the last tournament, I could see this being a really great match. But if this is equivalent to Summer Showdown Spark, this is an easy win on the Fusion. So you want to go on about how you don't like the Spark and you think that they're going to lose? Because personally myself, I have this going to the Spark.
Actually, I haven't done the Fusion. That's just, uh, yeah, I haven't done the Fusion. That's just I just haven't been impressed with Spark lately. Like, I think Summer Showdown me would have put the Spark before the Fusion, I think, but they just kind of lost their. They felt like the Gladiators to me, last tournament. Not even the Gladiators, like the Rain. Like the same way I've lost faith in Rain is the same faith I've lost in Atlanta. And it was newly gained faith too, because I've been dogging on the Spark for a while now. And the Summer Showdown I was like, dang, the Spark's actually a good team. I'm gonna pick them for most of my pick'ems. And no, I ended up losing all my points to the Spark. So I'm
Yeah, but
just
I mean, again, you
kind of
also
having
have to
them in a
think there
lower.
is that Junker Queen nerf coming in, so there's definitely potential that she could be knocked out of the meta, and we see the return of the Spark.
Well, that's only a benefit for Fusion because Fusion didn't look so hot in that meta too either.
Yeah, but even then, Spark still beat out Fusion.
Well, then again, MN3 though. That's all I guess.
And then Elfie and Shy.
Alfie and Shy against MN3. You gotta be kidding. And plus, they have their support line is I mean, have you seen their new support line?
What happened to it?
They have Teru and then I think and then Neko. And
What?
they literally got one of their coaches to be the next support player, and it's like, what? Why?
Wait, didn't isn't Teru from Vancouver?
Yeah,
The DPS player from Vancouver.
I'm pretty sure.
What happened to like Super Rich and uh
Who knows? That's why I'm not putting my faith in a Spark.
I don't know. I'm still putting him in there mainly because we've been talking for way too long. So that ends it for the week one of the kickoff or the Countdown Cup. Uh, Hopefully this tournament is a lot more like the kickoff clash and midseason madness, because if not, I'm gonna be very upset because Summer Showdown, while it was really interesting seeing a lot of teams have beautiful upsets, it's just when you're playing the same meta, like the exact same meta, two tournaments in a row, it's just kind of boring. So my hope is Junker Queen gets nerfed to the ground and we see the rise of Doomfist. So thank you guys so much for watching. Do you have any other closing statements?
Uh, no, but that Spark thing is right. You know, Teru and Neko. I just, yeah, I got the post right here. Welcome Teru as a support.
That makes no sense.
Crazy.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good day.